Hello and welcome to Report World News. My name is Barnona Zarzoda. On the eve of the Day of Defenders of the Native Land, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev paid a visit to the Artillery Brigade of the Central Military District in the Jizak region. This military unit has been recently overhauled, with reportedly modern facilities were created for the military personnel.
The Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, got acquainted with the completed work. Our main goal is to ensure the unity of the people and the army. The doors of the military units must be open for everyone, the President said. Mirziyoyev watched the training sessions and emphasized the importance of developing the knowledge and skills in military science from school age, as well as bolstering the relationship between military schools and military districts. President also visited the unit's medical center. Here, servicemen and members of their families are provided with qualified assistance. Later on, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev inspected the military training process conducted to the armed forces under the Ministry of Defense at the Forest Mountain Range. In 2018, he gave instructions to renovate the infrastructure along with the other military training grounds across the country. The training and test zone was brought into line with the real-time requirements, creating highly up-to-date conditions for the combat training of personnel and bringing new victories to the national team of the Ministry of Defense as the International Army Games in 2019 and 2020. At a mock presentation, the President was informed about the facilities built on the territory of the landfill. He congratulated the military personnel on the 29th anniversary of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Uzbekistan and Defender of the Motherland Day.
Upon returning to Tashkent, Mirziyoyev was presented information about large projects to be implemented by commercial banks. In particular, Uzbek banks plan to carry out projects worth some $11.5 billion in 2021.
14 projects worth $1 billion would be implemented in fields including construction, materials production, light industry, agriculture, petrochemicals, mechanical engineering, it added. 2,000 new jobs were expected to be created by a project for the production of plastic bags and soft containers in Sirdarya region, while one of the largest banks, Uzprom-Stroybank, plans to implement $94 million project for the production of non-woven fabric, according to other released details. 1,277 investment projects worth over $10.5 billion are scheduled by 2023. With the share of foreign investments and loans comprising almost $4.9 billion. This would create about 86,000 new jobs. $4.1 billion will be invested in these projects from all sources this year alone.
Uzbekistan's budget has received $9.8 billion instead of targeted $9.5 billion in 2020, up to 24% year-on-year. This was announced by the country's first deputy chairman of the State Tax Committee, Mubin Mirzayev, on Monday. Mirzayev said the country has managed to significantly reduce the tax burden. The improvement of tax administration, the implementation of the reforms in the economy, the adoption of the tax concept, and the new tax code have led to such qualitative changes, according to Mirzayev. Power outages have reached their all-time high in Uzbekistan. The Ministry of Energy blames the outdated equipment and says it has not enough resources to solve the problem. Thousands of residents in the southeastern Kashkadarya region were forced to meet the new year with candles, an atmosphere far from romantic, due to an accident at a substation on the evening of December 31st. MP Donior Ganiyev urged the heads of energy ministry to resign, saying it is they responsible for the energy crisis.
According to Ganiyev, many reforms have been carried out in the country in recent years. In particular, reforms of the registration system, the banking system, the introduction of state online services. At the same time, the country is still experiencing an energy crisis. This situation not only provokes a sharp discontent of the population, a social crisis, but also reduces economic activity and negatively affects the country's economy. The most annoying thing is that the problems in the energy sector wash away all the positive changes that have occurred in recent years, he wrote on his telegram. The Minister of Parliament also added that for people who spend the winter without gas and electricity and who do not have the opportunity to heat their homes, any reforms are worthless. In this situation, the only thing they need is electricity.
Amid the ongoing complex epidemiological situation in some countries, Uzbekistan has decided to extend the suspension of international flights from January 10 to February the 1st. Restrictions apply to the UK, Italy, Germany, Denmark, Austria, Australia and the Netherlands and South Africa. Citizens who have been in these countries within the last 14 days are prohibited from entering Uzbekistan during the restriction period. Women's role and status in public administration was under scrutiny at a roundtable conducted by the Legislative Chamber. The meeting saw the representatives of the Senate, the Cabinet of Ministers, and the National Centers of Human Rights.
According to the press service of the Legislative Chamber, the experts considered a setting up of an agency for women's affairs and proposed to introduce a system of quotas for the appointment of educated and qualified women to leadership positions in government and public institutions. The participants also discussed the need to create an integrated system that deals with problems of women, providing them with comprehensive assistance and support.
Uzbek scientists with their Russian colleagues have discovered the power of radiation on COVID-19 disinfection process. The research reveals that even small doses of radiation can destroy the coronavirus. According to Anatoly Zatsepin, professor of Ural Federal University, the deformed places along the RNA molecule are 1,000 times more sensitive to radiation exposure than the molecules of healthy cells. This means that small doses of radiation destructive for the virus would be absolutely safe for healthy cells. The analysts are claiming that the number of posted vacancies increased by 12.3% year-on-year. And now we would like to draw your attention to the list of professions that were in the most demand among employers in 2020. It was compiled by the specialists of Headhunter and looks as follows. Sales workers lead the list. Specialists of IT and telecommunications came second. The demand was also high for people engaged in marketing, advertising and communications. Huge demand was also for accountants. The list also includes the administrative staff, production sector, the banking sector, and etc.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo plans to use newly declassified intelligence to publicly accuse Iran of having ties to al-Qaeda on Tuesday. That's according to two sources familiar with the matter. The Trump administration in recent weeks has increased pressure on Tehran as part of a last-minute offensive before leaving office. With just 8 days left until President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated, sources say Pompeo is expected to offer newly declassified U.S. intelligence that offers details on allegations that Iran has given safe haven to al-Qaeda leaders and support for the group. That's despite some skepticism within the intelligence community and Congress. Pompeo has accused Iran of links to al-Qaeda in the past, but is yet to provide solid evidence. Sources say it's unclear how much Pompeo will reveal in his speech to the National Press Club in Washington. He may cite declassified material on the August killing of al-Qaeda's suspected second-in-command, when Abu Muhammad al-Masri was gunned down in Tehran by Israeli operatives. The New York Times has reported that al-Masri, accused of helping to mastermind the bombings of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa in 1998, was gunned down by Israeli operatives in Iran. But Iran denied al-Masri's assassination, saying there were no al-Qaeda terrorists on its soil. In 2001, former President George W. Bush accused Iran of links to al-Qaeda's 9/11 attacks, but those claims have since been discredited. Since taking office, Trump has continued to impose sanctions on Iran in an effort to force Tehran to negotiate a broader nuclear deal. But it has failed to bring them back to the table. U.S. officials say that more sanctions on Iran are expected before Trump leaves office, which Biden's advisors believe is an effort to make it harder for him to re-engage with Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have spoken for the first time since the riot at the U.S. Capitol. That's according to a senior White House official who says they had a, quote, good conversation Monday evening. It would also mark their first meeting since Trump slammed Pence for not challenging President-elect Joe Biden's Electoral College win. Trump encouraged his supporters to march to the Capitol, while Pence presided over the certification process for Biden's victory. A source familiar with the situation said that Trump had not reached out to Pence to check on his safety when he was evacuated as the Capitol was being mobbed. The violence left 5 people dead, including a police officer. Some Trump supporters at the scene discussed assassinating Pence for being a traitor. The senior official says that when they spoke Monday, Trump and Pence discussed the riot and, quote, reiterated that those who broke the law and stormed the Capitol last week do not represent the America First movement. The vice president has resisted pressure from Democrats to invoke the 25th Amendment, which would remove Trump from office. The Democrat-controlled House of Representatives plans to impeach Trump on Wednesday unless he resigns. Impeachment charges accuse him of inciting violence against the United States.
I understand the anxieties of other governments and other people. Okay, we get it. So we are sympathetic. Now, a lot of it is the practicality of it. And certainly, we don't want to be in a situation where, someone who hasn't done their homework goes and says something and then, we put other people in a difficult position. So look, this is a serious issue. I would do my homework and sort of double check it before I actually go firm. But I don't think you're looking at too long a period.
Months, a few months?
No, I think much less than that.
Fewer than that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think it should be some weeks in terms of getting clarity on this matter. A number of countries are in touch with us. I myself have spoken in the last few days to quite a few foreign ministers on this. And what we are telling them is, look, this is the first month, the production is now coming into stream. There's a certain amount of stock taking going on. We will get clarity pretty soon, on what our own consumption is going to be, deployments are going to be, and we will keep our global role very much in.
The Trump administration announced Monday that it was returning Cuba to the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism, a move that could complicate any efforts by the incoming Biden administration to revive Obama-era easing of strained relations with Havana. Just 9 days before President Donald Trump leaves office, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Cuba was being blacklisted for, quote, repeatedly providing support for acts of international terrorism by harboring U.S. fugitives and Colombian rebel leaders. Cuba's security support for Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was also cited by Pompeo as another reason for the blacklist. Pompeo said in a statement, quote, with this action, we will once again hold Cuba's government accountable and send a clear message. The Castro regime must end its support for international terrorism and subversion of U.S. justice. In 2015, former U.S. President Barack Obama formally removed Cuba from the terrorism list to help restore diplomatic ties between the two countries. Returning Cuba to the list rolls back that effort and would require lengthy legal deliberations for President-elect Joe Biden to reverse the move. The terrorism designation carries a prohibition on U.S. economic aid and a ban on U.S. arms exports, among other restrictions.
Wasting no time, the US government said it would begin collecting new duties on aircraft parts and other products from France and Germany from Tuesday. That's after it failed to resolve a 16-year dispute over aircraft subsidies with the European Union. In a notice to shippers late on Monday, US Customs and Border Protection said the new duties would apply from midnight on Tuesday. It's part of a long-running battle over government subsidies to Europe's Airbus and its US rival Boeing, with both having won cases at the World Trade Organization in recent years. The US will impose an additional 15% tariff on aircraft parts, including fuselage and wing assemblies, plus a 25% duty on certain wines. A European source familiar with the matter said talks between the two sides stalled in the final weeks of the Trump administration. Brussels said it would seek a swift resolution of the issue with US President-elect Joe Biden when he takes office later this month, although the Biden team had no immediate comment on the tariff issue. Airbus said the expansion of tariffs to include aircraft components made in France and Germany was counterproductive, as it would also harm US workers at its assemblies there. Some alcohol from the Airbus-producing nations, France, Germany, Spain and Britain, had already been subject to tariffs. but new varieties are now affected, and the French Wine Exporters Federation called it a sledgehammer blow.
Modest losses for the stock market on Monday as Congress moves ahead with efforts to impeach President Donald Trump and investors prepare for the start of earnings season. The Dow fell 89 points, the S&P 500 lost 25, the Nasdaq tumbled 165. Interest rates on U.S. government debt rose once again, hitting highs not seen since March. Mark Okada, CEO of Sycamore Tree Capital Partners, expects to see more volatility across all investments.
I frankly am glad to see a day of pullback a little bit. The huge move we saw last week is something that I really wouldn't expect to see, given the historic sort of very negative actions across our government, across our economy. And I think it's good to see a little bit of capital coming off the and gains being taken, and maybe this market getting a little bit better, lower in valuation.
That certainly was the case when it came to Bitcoin. It took a nasty tumble. The world's biggest cryptocurrency fell more than 11%, a plunge of $4,300 on Monday after hitting record highs the prior week. Some investors worry that after doubling in price since early December, the price of the notoriously volatile digital currency has become too bubble-like. As for individual stocks, the focus was on tech. Pro-Trump protesters demonstrated outside of Twitter, and the social media site permanently suspended the president's account. Facebook, Alphabet-owned Google, and Apple also took their strongest actions yet to limit Trump's social media reach after he instigated last week's Capitol riots. Shares of Twitter fell 6%. Tesla had its first down day since December 22nd, dropping nearly 8% in the stock's worst daily performance since October. Investors booked profits after Tesla shares rose more than sevenfold last year.
And this was our last report. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.